I grew up in Washington, D.C. I didn't know it was a deviant subculture. But our next guest can probably talk about that. It's Mickey Edwards. He was a congressman for 16 years from California, during which time he was a senior member of the House Republican leadership as chairman of the Republican Policy Committee. He was on two very critical committees that are in the news right now, the House Appropriations Committee, which is the spending committee, and the Budget Committees, which is the one that sets, we hope, a budget and determines where money will go. Right now, he is a vice president at the Aspen Institute and a director of the Aspen Institute's Rodell Fellowships on Public Leadership. He has had quite an odyssey today. Let me just tell you a little bit about how committed he was to being here with you today. He had to host a dinner in Aspen last night for an incoming leadership class. He then had an automobile pick him up at 10:30 from Aspen, drive the 3 hours or more, probably at night, probably 4 hours, to the Denver airport to catch a 7 a.m. flight to Fort Lauderdale, and then have a car service drive over here to Naples. Let's make him understand how much we appreciate the effort that he did. Mickey Edwards.
Thank you very much, Mickey. Thank you. Man, people would go through a lot more than that to get to Naples. I mean, so I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be where I don't have to wear a heavy coat and all that. So, as I understand, following on the last speaker, who was very good, it's my job to make you feel better about everything, right? And so, good luck with that. So I have a book out now that the title of it, The Parties versus the People, I came up with. It's not an exciting title. It says what I want to say, The Parties versus the People. But the subtitle of the book, which I didn't write, the editors at The Atlantic wrote it because the book grew out of an article I did for The Atlantic. And the subtitle was How to Turn Republicans and Democrats into Americans. And I thought when I first heard that, because I said, that sounds a little harsh, doesn't it? How to turn Republicans and Democrats into Americans? And they said, well, did you read what you wrote? And so what happened is that I spent, as Kai said, I spent 16 years as a member of Congress, and I was a part of the political system. I was in a party. I ran as a member of a party. I was in the leadership of the party when I was in Congress. And then after I did that, I left, and I left Congress and I went to teach. And I taught for 11 years at Harvard and 5 at Princeton. And what did that do? It gave me time to think about what I had seen and what I was watching on television and to reflect on it and noticing that something quite serious had happened in Washington. And what had happened was that no matter what the issue was, no matter whether you were talking about a budget or a stimulus or a TARP plan or a Supreme Court appointment or whatever it was, somehow all the Republicans were on one side and all the Democrats were on the other side. And it wasn't as though we had a Congress of Americans working together to solve our common problems. It was like the NFL. And it was a matter of not what do you do to make America work, but what do you do to make our team win? And so I started reflecting on why that was, and I'm not really very good with anything scientific or engineering, but I gave a talk to the American Academy for the Advancement of Science describing what I had concluded, and somebody got up in the back of the room and he said, oh, you're a systems engineer. Well, you just heard about systems. And my point is that the problems we have in Washington, the dysfunction, the inability to come together to solve problems, is a matter of the system that we've created, a political system in which we, during elections, reward intransigence, incivility, locked into a position, refusing to compromise, and we punish people who say, I'm going to compromise, I'm going to work with people across the aisle. Now, how does that work? So let me do a little constitutional stuff. The Constitution envisions, because our founders said, we're not going to be subjects, we're going to be citizens. And we tell the government what to do, it doesn't tell us what to do. And that suggests that the way we do it is an election system in which the voice of the people is heard. Sometimes, you don't do exactly what your constituents want you to do, but the voice of the people is heard in determining who will go to Washington and make the laws that determine, whether we go to war and what we pay in taxes and how much we spend on different programs. And we have a system now in which the voice of the people collectively is not heard. Why? Because we use closed party primaries to choose who is on the ballot. And in 46 of the 50 states, sore loser laws say that if you ran for your party's nomination and you lost, your name cannot be on the ballot. Well, that sounds fair, doesn't it? You ran for your nomination, you didn't get it, and you lost. How does it work in the real world? So I'm going to use two examples, and you can think of others. In the state of Delaware, after Joe Biden became vice president and they had to elect another United States senator, they had a primary, and a guy named Mike Castle was certain to be the next senator. He was a former governor, and was in Congress, and he was very popular in the state. And he had a primary. A lady named Christine O'Donnell ran against him. And she beat him. There are 1 million people in Delaware. She got 30,000 votes. If they had then gone to a general election in which Mike Castle could have still been on the ballot, he probably would have won. But we have allowed the parties to say, we will tell you who you can choose between in the fall, and 30,000 people were able, in our political system, to tell 1 million people, you cannot choose the person you would choose. In Utah, where there are 3 million people, 2,000 people in a convention denied Senator Robert Bennett the chance to be on the ballot in November, the person they almost certainly would have chosen. We are allowing small subset of highly ideological, super partisan people who show up in our primaries, 2,000 people in a state of 1 million, 30,000 people 2,000 in a state of 3 million, 30,000 in a state of 1 million, to tell all the rest of the people, you can't choose the person you want to choose to be there making these decisions about war and peace and taxes and spending. So there's another part of the Constitution, and I know people who come to a conference like this are very attentive to public affairs and more knowledgeable about these things than most people are. So you could probably, if I gave you a test, most of you could name every single word in the Constitution. But there is one part of it you might not remember, maybe the most important part, and that is that what made our system, it's a republic. It's a constrained government, it's a republic, but it's also a democracy. And the way the democracy works is that we choose people to represent us who we know and we trust, because the Constitution requires that every senator and representative be an actual inhabitant of the state from which they're elected. And so if you're running for Congress in Naples, Florida, the idea is that you know the interests, the economic concerns of the people in this area, and you know them, you know the candidates, they live among you. How does it really work? Not only have we given the political parties the ability to control access to the ballot, as I just told you, we have also given them the ability to draw congressional district lines to suit not the purposes of the people, but the purposes of the party. I'm one quick example of that. I am a total city guy. I really hate to admit it. To me, food comes from grocery stores, and I've been on a farm. I didn't know what I was seeing, but I was on a farm. And I'm from Oklahoma City, and I never lived anywhere but in a big city. And I was the first Republican elected in by the way, when I mention party, I'll just tell you what Republicans do, Democrats do, what Democrats do, Republicans do. Both parties do the same thing. So I was the first Republican elected in my district since 1928. My district was 74% Democrat. So the other party, the Democrats who then controlled the state legislature by a 9-to-1 margin, hated it. They didn't know how I got elected. I didn't know how I got elected. My mother didn't know how I got elected, but I did. And so what could they do to try to get rid of me. They tried to run people against me. That didn't work. So they redrew the district lines because they had the ability to, because we let, in 37 of the 50 states, the parties that control the legislature decide what the congressional district lines look like. I don't know how many of you have been to Oklahoma. It's not small. They took my district from the center of Oklahoma, one county wide, all the way up to the Kansas border, halfway across to Arkansas, in a big upside-down L. And because I'm a politician and self-referential and it's all about me, I thought, look what they did to me. Well, they didn't do it to me, did they? The people were entitled to somebody who knew them, knew their concerns, could articulate their interests. And I was now representing wheat farmers and cattle ranchers and small-town merchants, and I didn't know their problems, and I didn't know their economic interests, and they were being denied the right to be represented by what the Constitution envisioned one of them, because it suited the advantage of the political parties. That's the way our system works. Very quickly, I'll do this because I want to wrap up. I'm going to sound like, again, this is another downer. It isn't a downer. I'm going to, when I get through, I'm not pessimistic at all. But one other quick thing. When you get to Congress, I thought, hey, kumbaya, we're all members of the same Congress. We're going to solve all the problems together. Democrat, Republican, didn't matter. And then that lasted 30 seconds. That we voted on who would be Speaker. And, Democrats one way and Republicans the other way. Although, when you hear these comments by the speakers, no matter which party, about my job is to defeat the other guys, the Speaker of the House doesn't even need to be a member of Congress. Britain doesn't do it this way. Canada doesn't. They elect people who will not serve as party leaders, but as legislative leaders. We put people on committees, which are the linchpin of legislation in Congress, according to whether or not they have committed to their party, that they will stick with the party agenda. I know it because I was in the room when we did it. So why then am I an optimist? I can tell you more about, why do we have Republican staff for Republicans and Democrat staff for Democrats? Maybe numbers are different if you're a Republican than if you're a Democrat. I don't know. But here's why I'm optimistic. In 2006, the people of Washington State said, we are sick and tired of parties controlling the system. They went to the polls and they did away with party primaries. And they did away with party control of congressional districts. And in 2010, the people of California went to the polls. And they did away with party control of access to the ballot, party primaries. They did away with party control of redistricting. I'm optimistic because the revolution has already begun. USA Today wrote an article that the American people are fleeing from the political parties. 40% of Americans today register as independents. Now, I believe in political parties. I'm a member of a political party. What I don't believe in is giving them the authority to tell us who we can choose to represent us in Washington, or whether our wheat farmers are going to be represented by a city dude like me. Our constitutional system envisions that the people, all of you, will be able to control the decisions about who will sit in Washington and how they will decide the things that matter to you in your lives. So what I see is people beginning to say, we're tired of the system which raises to the top levels of our government people who will say, as Richard Murdoch said in Indiana, I will not compromise. There are 310 million of us. We are diverse. We have different backgrounds, different life experiences. We're all Americans, and the only way we're going to solve our problems is together, by being willing to fight for the things you believe in, to stand up for principle, and when you have gotten as much as you can in the direction you want to go, you sit down with the people on the other team and you say, let's find the places where we can come to an agreement. Because we have to keep the water pure. We have to keep the bridges from collapsing. We have to make sure that our troops have the equipment they need. We need to run our country for the American people, not for the benefit of two private, power-seeking political clubs. And I tell you that as somebody who for years, I was co-chairman of a platform committee for the Republican Party at a national convention. You know, I spent my life working in the party system. But I love the Constitution more than I love my party. I love America more than I love my party. I love America more than I love either party. And so all I'm saying is we, the American people, are at a point. As Edna St. Vincent Millay wrote a great poem, dedication of the statue to the suffragettes in Washington. And I love the end of her poem. It was, she started out as a sonnet, and it went through the history of the women's movement and a little bit of the people who were being honored there in the statue. And she said, forget the epitaph. Take up the flag. There's a cause to be fought to make America ours again instead of the parties. And it's up to us. If it's not working, it's because we allow it to not work. So that's my message to you. It is time to change the system. It's the system that's broken. The people in Washington are not bad people. They're not un-American. They love this country. They want to do well, and they are trapped in a system that says it is club versus club. And you are going to say to them, no more. No more. We're going to make America ours again, not just yours. Thank you.